You are looking at a grocery receipt that feels almost rude. A few small bags, a carton of eggs, a loaf of bread, a pound of butter if you were brave enough to buy it. Maybe one package of meat that costs what a whole family dinner used to cost. And somewhere in the back of your mind, you can hear an older woman saying, "There is still food in this house. You just forgot how to see it." My name is Caleb Schwartzentruber. I am 68 years old. My family comes from the old Amish and Mennonite communities of northern Ohio, and I grew up around farm kitchens where food was not entertainment. Food was duty, thrift, comfort, and sometimes survival. Now, the title says illegal, Amish dishes, so let me be plain before somebody gets upset. I am not telling you these meals were illegal by law. Most of them were not. What I mean is that these dishes almost feel illegal now because they break every rule the modern food business wants you to follow. They use stale bread instead of packaged sides. They stretch one egg across several plates. They make soup from flour, water, potatoes, bones, cabbage, crumbs, and garden scraps. They feed people without a delivery app, without a freezer full of branded boxes, and without asking permission from the grocery aisle. A Mennonite widow named Esther once told me, "If the table was full, we did not ask whether the meal was fancy." That line stayed with me, because a lot of seniors today are being pushed into a hard corner. Fixed income, smaller families, bigger receipts, and a food system that keeps teaching people to buy answers their grandmothers used to build from almost nothing. So these are 17 old Amish, Mennonite, Pennsylvania Dutch, and Depression-era dishes seniors made from almost nothing that somehow fed everyone. Some of you will remember them. Some of you may laugh because your mother made one when money was tight. Some of you may say, "Caleb, we never called that Amish. We just called that supper." Good. That means the knowledge is not dead yet. Use common sense with food safety. Keep leftovers cold. Cook eggs, meat, and beans properly. Do not use spoiled milk, swollen cans, unsafe home canned jars, or mystery leftovers. If you have diabetes, kidney trouble, heart trouble, swallowing trouble, allergies, or a medical diet, listen to your doctor and adapt these old ideas carefully. I want this to help you, not hurt you. Number 17 is milk toast. Now, milk toast has become an insult in modern language, like it means weak or timid. But in old kitchens, milk toast could be mercy in a bowl. You took bread, often stale bread, toasted it or dried it a little, and poured hot milk over it. Some families added butter, salt, and pepper. Some used a spoonful of gravy. Some sweetened it lightly for breakfast with cinnamon or a little molasses. In a sick room, an old person might get milk toast because it was soft, warm, and gentle. My grandmother Ruth made a version when somebody was recovering from influenza or just too tired to chew a heavy supper. She did not speak in nutrition labels. She simply knew warm milk, bread, and a little fat could get food into a person when the appetite had gone quiet. Modern stores sell soft food in little containers and call it convenience. Old kitchens made soft food from bread that might otherwise go to the chickens. That is the first lesson in this whole list. Before you throw something away, ask whether it still has one more job. Use fresh milk, not spoiled milk. Refrigerate dairy properly. If milk does not agree with you, broth can do the same job in a savory version. And if your family had a name for this, put it in the comments, because I have heard at least 6 different names from older viewers. Number 16 is bread gravy. Bread gravy is one of those dishes that sounds too poor until you taste it on a cold day. The old method was simple. You saved a little clean fat from bacon, sausage, roast meat, or butter. You stirred in flour. You cooked it until the raw flour smell disappeared. Then you added milk, broth, or water slowly until it became gravy. Pour that over bread, toast, biscuits, potatoes, or whatever starch was sitting there. A retired farmer outside Millersburg told me his mother could make bread gravy for 7 children with one skillet and almost no meat at all. The meat was not the meal, he said. The meat taught the gravy what to taste like. That is old food math. The modern plate says every person needs a big piece of meat. The old table said flavor can travel. A spoonful of drippings could season a pan of gravy, and the gravy could carry that flavor to bread, potatoes, noodles, or dumplings. Do not use rancid grease. Do not leave gravy sitting on the stove all afternoon. If you are watching sodium, be careful with cured meat, bouillon, and salty drippings. But do not look down on this dish. Bread gravy fed people when the cupboard looked empty and payday was still 4 days away. Number 15 is rivvel soup. Some families spell it rivals. Some say rivels. Some just call them little dough crumbs. In Pennsylvania, Dutch country, and old Mennonite kitchens, rivvel soup was a way to turn flour and egg into something that felt like food. You beat an egg, stir it into flour with a pinch of salt, and rub it with your fingers until little crumbs form. Drop those crumbs into simmering broth, milk, or potato water. In a few minutes, the pot thickens and those little bits become tender. Ruth used to say rivels were proof that flour had more lives than bread. You could make bread, noodles, dumplings, pie crust, gravy thickener, crumbs, or rivels. Modern kitchens often see flour as one product. Old kitchens saw flour as a whole toolbox. The almost nothing version uses water, potato cooking liquid, onion, salt, pepper, and rivels. A richer version uses chicken broth, milk, parsley, celery leaves, or a little shredded chicken if you have it. But the dish was built for the opposite situation, when there was not enough chicken to call it chicken soup. If you use egg, coat the soup fully. If you need lower carbs, this is not your everyday meal. But for stretching a pot, rivvel soup is one of the old secrets. Number 14 is potato soup, with nothing hiding in it. I say it that way because modern recipes keep apologizing for potato soup, unless it has bacon, cheese, sour cream, ham, and half the dairy case in it. Old potato soup did not apologize. Potatoes, onion, water, salt, pepper, a little milk if there was milk, and a spoon of fat if there was fat. That was enough. You cooked the onion first if you had time. You simmered the potatoes until soft. You mashed part of the pot against the side so the soup thickened itself. Then you finished it with milk, butter, pepper, or parsley. In old church cookbooks you will find potato soups with ingredient lists so short they almost look unfinished. They were not unfinished. The recipe assumed you knew the quiet parts. Do not drown it. Do not scorch the milk, season in layers, and let the potato starch do some of the work. A lot of grocery spending today comes from forgetting that texture can replace richness. Mashed potato in the broth makes the soup feel creamy even when there is not much cream. Browned onion makes it taste deeper than the price of the ingredients. Cool leftovers quickly, refrigerate them, reheat gently if milk is involved, and if your family added dumplings, rivels, celery, or a ham bone, tell us below. The comments are where old soup comes back to life. Number 13 is fried cornmeal mush. Cornmeal mush is just cornmeal, water, and salt cooked slowly until thick. Eat it hot, and it is breakfast. Pour the leftovers into a pan, chill it, slice it the next morning, and fry it. Now it becomes something else entirely. An old farmer near Baltic told me his mother made mush on purpose at night because morning came early and nobody had time to start breakfast from scratch. The first meal was soft. The second meal was crisp. One pot did 2 days of work. That is what modern convenience forgot. Convenience does not have to come from a box. Sometimes convenience is yesterday's work paying you back. Fried mush could be eaten with milk, molasses, maple syrup, apple butter, gravy, or a little fried onion. In tighter homes, it was not a side dish. It was the plate. If blood sugar matters, go easy on syrup. If fat matters, use a light pan fry instead of deep frying. And make sure cooked grains are cooled and stored safely. Simple food still deserves clean handling. Number 12 is cabbage and noodles. Cabbage and noodles is a dish that can feed more people than it has any right to feed. You slice cabbage thin, cook it with onion and butter, bacon grease or oil, then toss it with noodles, salt, pepper, and maybe a little cottage cheese or sour cream if your family did that. Some people brown the cabbage until it turns sweet. Some keep it softer and paler. Both sides will argue, like church ladies, over a pie table. A Mennonite woman outside Walnut Creek told me cabbage was the vegetable that stayed loyal. Lettuce wilted. Berries disappeared. Tomatoes had a season. But cabbage sat in the cellar, waited its turn, and stretched noodles when flour had to feed a table. Modern households buy a head of cabbage, use a quarter of it, and let the rest die in the drawer. Old households had plans for the whole head: slaw, soup, fried cabbage, sauerkraut, noodles, stuffed leaves, and animal scraps only at the very end. That is not poverty thinking. That is stewardship. If cabbage bothers your stomach, cook it longer and start with a smaller portion. If you need more protein, add egg, beans, cottage cheese, or leftover meat. The old dish gives you the base. You can strengthen it for your own body. Number 11 is stewed tomatoes over bread. If you grew up around home canned tomatoes, this one may hit a memory. A jar of tomatoes, a little onion, salt, pepper, maybe a pinch of sugar if the tomatoes were sharp, and bread that was too dry to enjoy plain. Heat the tomatoes, spoon them over bread or toast, and the bread becomes a meal instead of waste. Some families thickened it with flour. Some added butter. Some added bacon bits if there were any. Some ate it because they liked it. Some ate it because the pantry was down to jars and bread. I found versions of this in old church cookbooks, but the recipe never tells the whole story. It does not say that the tomatoes were planted in spring, weeded in summer, canned in August heat, carried to the cellar, and opened in February when money was short. That spoonful over bread was not just tomatoes. It was last summer coming back to feed winter. Be careful with home canned food. If a lid is loose, a jar is leaking, liquid is spurting, the smell is wrong, or anything looks suspicious, do not taste it. Throw it away. Botulism is not an old wives' tale. Use tested canning methods. The old women who did this well were not careless. They were disciplined. Number 10 is bean pot with a bone. Beans have fed more families than steak ever will. Take dry beans, soak if needed, cook them with onion, water, bay leaf if you have it, and a ham bone, soup bone, smoked hock, or leftover bits of meat. The bone gives flavor. The beans give body. The pot gives you supper, lunch tomorrow, and sometimes another soup after that. A butcher once told me, "The bone is where poor people learn patience." He was right. If you rush beans and bones, you get disappointment. If you simmer them slowly, the flavor moves out into the pot. Modern grocery stores sell boneless everything because it is clean, fast, and expensive. Old kitchens knew bones were not trash until they had given up their last bit of flavor. Cook beans properly. Kidney beans especially need proper boiling because undercooked kidney beans can make people sick. Watch salt with cured pork. Keep the pot refrigerated after cooking. And if beans trouble your stomach, start small. Rinse canned beans, or choose the types your body handles best. Number 9 is dandelion greens with hot dressing. This is one that makes modern people nervous because they were trained to think every useful plant in the yard is a weed. Old Amish and Mennonite families, along with plenty of Depression-era families, used young dandelion greens in spring. They picked them before the plant became tough and bitter, washed them well, and dressed them with a hot dressing made from bacon drippings, vinegar, a little sugar, salt, pepper, and sometimes egg. Now listen carefully. Do not eat plants from sprayed lawns, roadsides, dog areas, or places you cannot identify safely. If you are not certain what you are picking, do not pick it. And if your doctor has you on medicine affected by greens or vitamin K, be wise. But the old lesson matters. Families once looked at the edge of the yard and saw food, not just lawn maintenance. The modern system sells herbicide to kill dandelions, then sells salad greens in plastic boxes. That should make a fixed-income person raise an eyebrow. A little bitterness in spring told people winter was ending. Some of you remember that. If your mother made dandelion salad, tell the younger ones how she cleaned it and dressed it. Number 8 is sour milk pancakes, but we need to talk about the word sour. In old kitchens, sour milk often meant milk that had clabbered naturally in a world where milk was handled differently. Today, I do not want you using questionable spoiled milk from the back of the refrigerator. That is not thrift. That is gambling. Use cultured buttermilk, plain yogurt thinned with water, or milk soured safely with a little vinegar or lemon juice. Then make pancakes with flour, egg if you have it, baking soda or baking powder depending on the recipe, salt, and a little fat. The old idea was not to waste milk that had turned for baking use. Acid helps make pancakes tender and helps baking soda lift them. A breakfast that looks like almost nothing can fill a table if you understand batter. Ruth made pancakes when supper was thin, not just breakfast. A stack of pancakes, fried apples, molasses, or apple butter could calm a hungry household without opening a package of meat. If blood sugar matters, keep portions modest and add protein if you can. If dairy bothers you, use a recipe built for that. But do not miss the principle. Before throwing away a food, old cooks asked whether it had moved from one category into another. Fresh milk for drinking, cultured milk for baking, stale bread for pudding, bones for broth, scraps for soup. Number 7 is bread pudding without pretending it is dessert first. Modern bread pudding can be fancy. Bourbon sauce, restaurant plates, powdered sugar. But the older version started as rescue work. Stale bread, milk, eggs if available, sugar or molasses, cinnamon, raisins or apples if there were any, and a little fat. Soak the bread, bake it, and suddenly, dry bread becomes a pan that can feed children, workers, grandparents, and whoever stopped by. A churchwoman once told me bread pudding was the reason bread never died on Saturday. It became Sunday's sweet, Monday's breakfast, or a soft supper for someone with tired teeth. If you have only 1 or 2 eggs, you can still make a version. If you have no raisins, use chopped apple. If you have no fancy spice, use a little cinnamon. If sugar needs to be watched, reduce it and let apples or vanilla carry more of the flavor. Keep dairy and egg dishes refrigerated. Do not leave a pan sitting out all day because your grandmother survived it once. Older kitchens had discipline, even when they did not have labels and thermometers. Number 6 is pickled beet eggs. This one does not sound like almost nothing until you understand the old economy of brine. You cooked beets, ate the beets, and saved the beet juice and vinegar brine. Then you put hard-boiled eggs into that pink brine with onion, sugar if used, salt, and spices. After a day or 2 in the refrigerator, the eggs turned purple on the outside and sharp sweet in flavor. In Pennsylvania, Dutch and Amish adjacent kitchens, pickled eggs showed up at suppers, picnics, church tables, and refrigerators where somebody always needed one more protein to stretch a meal. The modern kitchen throws away brine and then buys flavored snacks. The old kitchen asked, "What can this liquid still do?" Use refrigerator pickling unless you are following a tested canning recipe. Keep eggs cold. Do not leave them out at a picnic table for hours. If sodium or sugar matters, adjust carefully. But as a leftover logic lesson, pickled beet eggs are hard to beat. Number 5 is Shoofly-style crumb cake, or wet bottom pie. I am not putting this here because sugar is cheap medicine. It is not. I am putting it here because it shows how old households made a treat when there was no fresh fruit, no chocolate, and no expensive filling. Flour, crumbs, molasses, water, fat, and spices could become a dark, sticky, humble dessert. In some homes it was pie. In some it was more like cake. In Pennsylvania Dutch country, Shoofly pie became famous, but versions of molasses crumb sweets lived wherever families had flour and a jar of molasses. A small square with coffee could make a plain meal feel complete. That mattered. Poor households were not machines. Children still wanted something sweet. Grandparents still wanted a reason to linger at the table. Use moderation, especially if blood sugar matters. Molasses is still sugar. But do not miss the emotional wisdom. Old cooks knew how to make celebration from pantry staples, and that kept morale alive when money was thin. Number 4 is chicken pot pie that may not have much chicken. In Pennsylvania Dutch kitchens, pot pie often means squares of dough cooked in broth, not always a baked pie with a crust. You make dough from flour, egg or water, salt, and roll it flat. Cut it into squares. Simmer those squares with potatoes, onion, broth, and whatever chicken is available. Sometimes there was plenty of chicken. Sometimes there was one carcass, a few shreds, and a pot of broth doing the heavy lifting. This dish fed everyone because the noodles became the meal. The chicken gave identity. The broth gave comfort. The potatoes gave body. The dough gave fullness. A modern shopper might say, "There is not enough meat for dinner." An old cook would say, "Then we are making pot pie." Cook chicken thoroughly. Cool leftovers quickly. If rolling dough is hard on your hands, cut simple dumpling strips or use wide noodles. The spirit of the dish is not perfection. The spirit is making one bird feed more mouths than it looks able to feed. Number 3 is pan hodgepodge. Different families use different names for this. Hash, hodgepodge, supper skillet. Fried leftovers, bubble and squeak in some traditions. Around our people, it was often just warm that up with potatoes. You take leftover potatoes, cabbage, onion, carrots, beans, bits of meat, gravy, or whatever cooked vegetables are safe and still good. Chop them, fry them in a skillet until the edge is brown. Add an egg on top if you have one. Serve it with bread, pickles, or applesauce. This dish is almost illegal in a culture that wants every meal to begin with a fresh purchase. The old kitchen began with a question: what is already cooked and what will spoil first? That question could save more money than a coupon. Be strict with leftovers. If you do not know how old it is, do not use it. If it smells wrong, feels slimy, or sat out too long, throw it away. Thrift does not mean eating danger, but safe leftovers deserve a plan. A planned leftover is not a failure. It is tomorrow's shortcut. Number 2 is church-kettle vegetable soup. This was the pot that made small offerings look generous. One person had carrots, one had cabbage, one had potatoes, one had celery tops, one had a jar of tomatoes, one had beans, one had a bone, one had onion. Put it together, simmer it slowly, and suddenly the table had soup for everyone. I remember old church suppers where the soup tasted better than the ingredient list because it carried many hands. That matters. We talk about self-sufficiency, but old rural life was not always one person doing everything alone. It was also neighbors sharing scraps of abundance. Modern food culture isolates people. Individual meals, individual packages, individual convenience. Old soup reminded people that a community could feed itself from pieces. At home, the same idea works in a smaller pot. Keep a freezer bag for clean vegetable scraps you know are safe for broth, onion ends, carrot peels, celery leaves, herb stems. Avoid moldy scraps, spoiled food, strong cabbage scraps if you dislike the flavor, and anything dirty or sprayed. Use bones safely. Strain broth. Salt at the end. If you grew up with a church soup like this, please leave the town, the church, or the family name if you are comfortable. Not private information. Just enough that the younger ones understand this was real food made by real people. Number 1 is poor man's feast. That is not one official recipe. It is the plate old seniors knew how to build when there was almost nothing left. Fried potatoes, bread gravy, a spoon of beans, stewed tomatoes, pickles, applesauce, cabbage, a boiled egg, or a piece of yesterday's bread pudding. Nothing fancy by itself, but together it fed everyone. This is the part I want you to hear. The secret was not one magic Amish recipe. The secret was a way of seeing the kitchen. Stale bread was not trash. It was toast, pudding, crumbs, stuffing, gravy bread, or soup thickener. Potato water was not always sink water. It could be soup base. Bones were not finished when the meat was carved. They could become broth. Bacon grease was not just grease. Used carefully, it was seasoning. A half head of cabbage was not a problem. It was noodles, soup, slaw, or supper. A jar from the cellar was not just a jar. It was summer stored for winter. That way of seeing is what fed large families from almost nothing. And that is what many seniors need again now. Not because we want to go backward in every way. I like refrigeration. I like clean water. I like knowing more about food safety than some of our grandparents knew. But I do not like watching older Americans feel helpless in a grocery store when their own families once carried knowledge that made them harder to scare. The modern food business profits when every answer is a product. The old kitchen survived because every ingredient had more than one use. So if this list brought back a dish your mother, grandmother, aunt, church kitchen, or neighbor used to make, write it down below. Tell us what your family called it. Tell us what went into it. Tell us what you would warn younger people not to do. Because one day a grandchild may be standing in a grocery store with a receipt that feels impossible, and the thing that helps them may not be an app, a coupon, or another plastic package. It may be your comment. It may be your comment. It may be your grandmother's soup. It may be a dish that looked like almost nothing and somehow fed everyone.